There's no doubt that one of the real pleasant surprises of the 2014 NFL season has to be the Cleveland Browns. 4 games left in the season, the Browns are 7-5. Most of us probably didn't even think the Browns would win 7 games this year. I thought they might be good enough to just win 7, improve a little, but 7-5. The Browns are in the mix in the wild card race in the AFC. Who saw that coming? The Browns technically are still in the mix in the AFC North with a chance to win the division, perhaps. Again, who saw that coming? A real pleasant surprise. Credit to everybody in that organization. This has been a nice season for the Cleveland Browns so far, but I think this team has reached a real crossroads with 4 games left in 2014. And this is the time where tough decisions sometimes have to be made as an organization, both for the immediate benefit of the organization and sometimes more importantly for the long-term benefit and help and growth of the organization. There's no doubt that one of the reasons that the Browns are sitting at 7-5 is the play of quarterback Brian Hoyer. He has been a calm, steadying force. He has provided some leadership to that locker room. He has provided some presence, and he has been good enough to help the Browns to a 7-5 record. But we are also talking about a Brian Hoyer that is in a contract year. We're also talking about a Brian Hoyer that by him starting, you were keeping your first-round pick, Johnny Manziel, on the bench. And you have to be realistic here. You're looking at the playoff picture in the AFC right now. Based off of the way things are currently going and based off of the way the team is currently constructed, do the Cleveland Browns really have a realistic chance of making the playoffs this year? Probably not. And even if that is the case, or not the case, let's say, and this team can somehow find a way to make the playoffs, it's not like they're a championship contending team. It's not like they're that close. So by sitting there and putting all of your eggs into the basket for 2014, you could potentially be really setting yourself up for failure as an organization long term. One of the biggest things I've knocked the Cleveland Browns organization for over the years is their failure to learn from their previous mistakes and not repeat them. They make mistakes, then they don't learn from them, they make the same mistakes again, dot, 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 dot. Well, with a Brian Hoyer, here's a chance to learn from your past. This was like when you drafted Tim Couch number 1 in 99. He wasn't great, he had some injury problems, but he had some flashes occasionally. But then they got to a point in time they went with Kelly Holcomb. And then there became a huge quarterback controversy. And then they decided they were going to roll with Holcomb. It ruins Tim Couch, and Holcomb eventually shows who he really is, and it sets the organization back years. 2007, you draft Brady Quinn in the first round, but you start Derek Anderson pretty much all year. Derek Anderson has a very, very good year for him. And then you don't play Brady Quinn. And then you get to that point where you give Derek Anderson big money and you continue to keep Brady Quinn on the bench. You get this huge quarterback controversy. Derek Anderson eventually shows who he is. Brady Quinn's growth and development is stunning. Frankly, never gets off the ground. And you end up with no quarterback at all. You didn't learn from your mistake of the past. You were doomed to repeat it. You did repeat it. And then again, you sent your organization back years. And now in 2014, it was really kind of the same situation. Look, Brian Hoyer's been okay, but he hasn't exactly been great. Completion percentage under 60%. I think his touchdown interception ratio is just a little bit better than 1-to-1. Some people say, well, he's done good enough for them to win 7 games. Yeah, and you might say, oh, he's done good enough in big-time situations. He's led several come-from-behind victories. That's true. But you can only get so far in the NFL with okay play from your quarterback. And that's what Hoyer's been. He's been okay. And if the team got more than okay out of the quarterback position, maybe a little bit more out of their defense as well, could they be better than 7-5? Furthermore, when we're talking about just being okay, when you look at Hoyer, is it really that much more upside? Is he really going to be any different than who he already is? Is he really going to get any better? Also, maybe we wouldn't have to have so many come from behind and miraculous finishes and pull them out close at the end victories if Hoyer played better more consistently throughout games. And now you're in a situation where if you start Hoyer these last 4 games and he plays well these last 4 games, there could potentially be a lot of pressure on the organization to re-sign this guy to a contract that way exceeds what he actually brings to the table, thereby also delaying the opportunity and growth and development of Johnny Manziel and basically You're not learning from your mistakes as an organization, therefore you are doomed to repeat them, and you will eventually set your organization back years. When I look at Johnny Manziel right now, I know the media wants him to start. They've always wanted him to start. But to start off the year, I think the Browns were right for starting Brian Hoyer. And for the most part, they've been right for sticking with Brian Hoyer. But I think they've reached a point in time and a crossroads in their organization, both for this year and beyond, where that's no longer the case. At some point in time, it has to be about the future. Brian Hoyer is always going to be okay, but that's going to be his upside. That's his ceiling. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with okay at the quarterback position in the National Football League anymore. It's just not going to happen. Johnny Manziel has a lot more upside. He has a much higher ceiling. Now, granted, you could argue he has a much higher or lower floor. That is true as well. But I'm looking at that ceiling. I'm looking at that upside. And I'm looking at the things that he could potentially bring to the table, that Zuzu kind of, that life, that buzz, that pep, that Brian Hoyer just can't bring. And I think when you look at the last 4 games of 2014 and you look at this organization going beyond that, I don't think this organization could realistically feel confident in giving big-time money to Brian Hoyer. And if that's the case, and if you're not going to do that, then why continue to play him? Because then you will have reached a decision where you figure Hoyer is about what he is, and Manziel's not really much different. If anything, as he goes along, he could get better where Hoyer's going to stay the same. You got to ride with Johnny Manziel. Because at this point in time, in your last 4 games, if you're Cleveland, you win, let's say, 2 or 3 of your last 4. Make the playoffs or you don't, either way. Would you rather have that come with Brian Hoyer as your starting quarterback, or would you rather have that come with Johnny Football as your starting quarterback? Me personally, I'd rather that come with Johnny Football because I'm ending the season on a high note. I've started my first-round pick at quarterback. I've really begun that growth and developmental process with this said young quarterback, and now I can get ready for 2015 and beyond, building this team, this organization around this young quarterback, and all the while, from a salary cap and financial standpoint, I could get better quarterback play out of Johnny Manziel the next several years, potentially 4 more after 2014 at a much cheaper rate than I would if I paid Brian Hoyer a big-time money deal. From a fiscal standpoint, from a football standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, from a pretty much everything standpoint, I think the Cleveland Browns have reached a critical crossroads in their organization's history, and I think now is the time for them to make a change. They must learn from the mistakes of the organization in the past and be determined to not repeat them. The old Browns organization would sit there and start Brian Hoyer the rest of the year and then give him way too much damn money, roll with him. Hoyer will eventually show that he's not going to get any better. Then you've delayed Manziel's growth and development too much, and now you're back in the same damn situation. You've set your organization back another 5 years. The time has come. The moment is now. Manziel can bring more to the table, and as a result, the Cleveland Browns must gamble on that. They took this guy in the first round for a reason. Somebody in that organization believed in him. Now it's time to find out what he can do. Now it's time to find out what he can bring to the table. It's time for the Johnny Football era to officially begin in Cleveland. Not even just so much for the benefit of this team for the last 4 games of the season. More importantly, though, for the long-term well-being of Johnny Manziel and the Cleveland Browns as an organization.